Welcome back to Book to Read. We are diving deep into a book that, let's be honest, probably needs no introduction.
Yeah.
The Catcher in the Rye.
Oh, a classic.
Classic. This is episode 20.
Okay.
And I know some of you might have, tackled this one back in high school.
Mm-hmm.
But trust me, there's always something new to discover.
For sure.
In Holden Caulfield's world.
Absolutely. It's one of those books that stays with you and you get something new each time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So for those who haven't met him yet,
Right.
Holden Caulfield, he's our narrator,
Okay.
teenager,
Yep.
just got kicked out of yet another prep school.
Uh-huh.
And he decides to spend a few days wandering around New York City before he has to face the music at home.
Yeah, but it's not just about what happens, right?
Right.
It's about his voice.
His voice.
That very specific way of seeing the world.
That's what makes Catcher in the Rye so powerful.
Yeah.
Absolutely. His voice is what hooks you from page one. He's cynical, he's funny, and even though he can be a real pain, you can't help but be drawn into his thoughts.
For sure.
And that brings us to something that always fascinates me about Holden.
Okay.
He's incredibly self-aware, even about his own flaws.
Right.
There's this line where he says, "I'm the most terrific liar you ever saw in your life." But then he goes on to tell us all the ways he lies,
Right.
which makes you wonder, is he being incredibly honest
Oh, interesting.
by admitting all of this?
It's like, yeah, that's a great point. It's like, is Salinger playing with this idea of a reliable narrator?
Right.
He might exaggerate.
Uh-huh.
He might lie outright.
Right.
But that self-awareness just adds another layer, doesn't it, to his character?
Absolutely.
And it makes you think about those teenage years
Yes.
when everything feels so intense.
Oh, yeah.
And you're trying to figure out who you are,
Right.
even if it means putting up a front.
Isn't that the truth?
Totally.
I remember being so worried about fitting in, about seeming cool, saying the right things.
Yeah.
And speaking of things, Holden says,
Huh?
he's got this one phrase he throws around a lot. Phony.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
Teachers.
Yeah.
Classmates.
Mm-hmm.
Even the girls he dates.
Right.
Nobody escapes Holden's judgment.
That's right. Nobody's good enough for Holden.
Yeah, and it's like everything and everyone is phony.
Yeah. Is it about superficiality? Is
Yeah.
it about insincerity?
Uh-huh.
Or is it something deeper? I think it reflects Holden trying to, define his own values in
Right.
a world that feels more and more confusing.
Yeah, more and more artificial.
Yeah.
It's funny because that feeling of encountering phoniness
Mm-hmm.
doesn't really go away, even when you become an adult.
No, it doesn't.
I think about work meetings
Oh, yeah.
where everyone's pretending to be thrilled about something,
Oh, yeah, I've been in a few of those.
or those social situations where you have to, force a smile.
Yeah, you put on that face.
Yeah. Holden's outrage might seem a bit over the top at times, but I think he's tapping into a universal experience.
It's that disillusionment, right? Yearning for something real. And what's interesting is
Yeah.
Holden calls out phoniness in others,
Right.
but he's also aware of himself putting on an act. So is he projecting,
Ooh, that's a good point.
Mm,
He's so quick to judge.
yeah,
But maybe he's the most phony of them all.
maybe.
Or maybe that's just part of being a teenager.
I think you're right. It's like trying on different identities, isn't it?
Right.
It's that in-between stage
Yeah.
where you're not a child anymore, but not quite an adult. You're just trying to figure out what you believe in,
Right.
what's important to you,
Right.
how to navigate a world that often just feels fake.
Yeah. So fake.
Superficial.
And this brings us to one of the most intriguing aspects of Holden's character,
Okay.
his deep-seated desire for connection.
Yeah. Despite all that cynicism,
Oh, yeah.
he wants to connect.
He's craving those real relationships.
He is. Think about his fixation on Jane Gallagher. He keeps talking about calling her, even though he's worried about her dating Strad later.
Yes.
She almost represents a kind of lost innocence for him.
Oh,
A simpler time.
Yeah, it's like he's holding on to this idealized version of her in his mind as a way to, escape that phony adult world
Yeah, escape the disillusionment.
that he's so disillusioned with.
Yeah, and then there's Sally Hayes.
Oh, Sally.
He finds her annoying,
Right.
superficial, everything he claims to hate,
Yes.
and yet he keeps going back to her.
Why?
Why?
Maybe it's because she represents that world that he wants to be a part of,
Maybe.
even if he doesn't want to admit it.
Could you imagine?
Or maybe it's just a teenage thing.
Or that It's like the awkwardness of trying to figure out relationships and what you're looking for in another person.
It's that push and pull between wanting to belong and feeling like an outsider.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we can't forget Phoebe.
Oh, Phoebe.
His younger sister. One of the few people he genuinely cares about.
Oh, yeah.
Their interactions are some of the most heartwarming moments.
Tender moments in the book.
Absolutely. She's like a breath of fresh air.
Oh, she is. And speaking of fresh air,
Okay.
let's take a moment to talk about a great platform for book lovers out there.
Right.
Bookspace.
Bookspace.
It's an app where you can connect with other readers, share your favorite quotes,
Nice.
organize your to-read list.
I like it.
It's basically a dream come true for bookworms like us.
Yeah, I could see Holden being all over those forums.
Right.
Debating whether a character is phony or not.
Right.
You'd probably get banned for swearing, though.
Probably.
Yeah.
But seriously, if you're looking for a community of like-minded readers,
Yeah.
Bookspace is the place to be.
For sure.
You can even find groups dedicated to specific books,
Oh, cool.
like The Catcher in the Rye.
I like it.
Imagine being able to dive deep into the themes. Right.
Characters, all the little details that make this book so captivating.
Yeah, maybe even have some friendly debates about who's the most phony of them all.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, before we get too lost in the world of Bookspace,
Okay.
let's get back to Holden and his journey.
Right.
One thing that can't be ignored when discussing The Catcher in the Rye is the question of mental health.
Uh-huh.
I mean, looking at Holden's behavior through a modern lens,
Yeah.
we'd be pretty concerned.
Absolutely. Without trying to diagnose a fictional character,
Of course.
it's pretty clear he's struggling.
Right.
He shows signs of depression,
Mm-hmm.
anxiety,
Right.
and there's this underlying trauma from his younger brother, Ali,
Oh, yeah.
that he never really addresses.
It's heartbreaking.
It is.
You can see how much pain he's in, even though he tries to hide it behind that
Lots of
cynicism
sarcasm.
and sarcasm.
What's groundbreaking about this book is Salinger doesn't shy away from portraying that, right? That inner turmoil that teenagers can experience.
That so many teenagers experience.
Exactly. It's a reminder that even those who seem the most rebellious
Right.
or detached, often dealing with much deeper emotional issues.
Yeah.
And even though he uses that humor,
Right.
cynicism to deflect,
Right.
you see these moments of vulnerability where
Yes.
he's reaching out for connection,
I understand
for
it.
understand. Think about his interactions with Jane.
Mm-hmm.
There's a tenderness there
Yes.
when he remembers those childhood moments, you know,
Yeah.
playing checkers, just talking.
It's so pure.
She represents a simpler time, you know, when things felt more authentic. And it's interesting to contrast those memories with his relationship with Sally Hayes.
Oh, yeah.
Sally embodies everything that he claims to hate,
Right. Conventional, cares about appearances.
interested in all the things he despises.
Right. And yet, he keeps going back to her.
So why?
Why is he drawn to her?
Is she a safe option, you know?
Maybe because he could be superficially charming with her,
Yeah.
but not really risk any vulnerability.
Or maybe, deep down, he wants to fit in.
He wants to be a part of that world.
He wants to be a part of that world he rejects. Yeah.
It's a classic teenage dilemma,
It is.
wanting to be unique, but also accepted
But also accepted, right?
at the same time.
And Salinger captures that.
He captures it so well.
Yeah, he does.
Even though Holden can be frustrating, I think that's why readers connect with him.
Yeah.
We've all felt that alienation,
Right.
that longing for connection,
No, this is-
that struggle to figure out who we are.
In a world that doesn't make sense.
Yeah, in a world that doesn't always make sense.
It doesn't. And let's not forget Salinger's writing, right?
Oh my gosh, the writing.
The way he captures Holden's voice with all the slang, the digressions.
The cynical humor.
It's masterful.
It's so good.
It pulls you right in.
You feel like you're there,
You're right there with him.
like eavesdropping on his inner monologue,
Yeah.
which can be hilarious,
Yeah.
but also heartbreaking.
Heartbreaking at the same time. Take that scene in the lavender room
Oh, yeah.
when he's dancing with those 3 tourist girls.
Oh, yes.
They're so not his type,
Not at all.
but his description of their behavior,
It's so funny.
it's so funny and yet so insightful.
Right.
It's Salinger using that humor to really highlight Holden's alienation.
Yeah.
He's surrounded by people,
Mm-hmm.
but he feels completely disconnected. And it's
Okay.
through that humor that we see Holden's intelligence
Right.
and his sharp observations of human nature,
Oh, yeah.
he's definitely a keen observer, even if his judgments are a little harsh.
A little harsh sometimes.
But I think that's part of what makes him so compelling, right?
Yeah, he's not afraid to speak his mind,
No.
even if it makes him unpopular.
And it brings us back to that question of phoniness.
Yeah.
Is he just being judgmental? Or is he genuinely trying to expose that hypocrisy,
Right.
that superficiality he sees?
In the adult world,
In the adult world.
I think it's a bit of both.
Probably.
He's definitely idealistic and prone to seeing things in black and white,
Right.
but he's also sensitive
He is.
and deeply affected by the things that he sees.
Think about how he reacts to the deaths of Allie.
Allie and James Castle.
James Castle, yeah.
Those events really traumatized him.
Yeah.
They inform his cynical outlook.
They do. That's right, loss of innocence.
Yeah.
Major theme in the book.
Yes.
Holden desperately trying to preserve something pure and authentic.
Yeah, in a world that feels corrupt and disillusioning.
Yeah. And that desire leads us to one of the most famous passages in the novel.
Oh, here we go.
Holden's dream of being the catcher in the rye.
The Catcher in the Rye.
He pictures himself
Yeah.
standing at the edge of this field of rye,
Uh-huh.
catching children before they fall off a cliff.
It's such a powerful image.
It is. And really speaks to his desire to protect that innocence, doesn't it? To shield children from the pain and the disillusionment
Of the adult world.
of the adult world.
But it also raises questions
It does.
about his own ability to save himself.
Right. Can he catch himself
Is he able to catch himself
before he falls?
before he falls? That's the question.
Yeah. And I think it resonates with readers on a personal level too, right?
I think so. We all have those things
We do.
that we wish we could protect.
Those moments of joy and wonder that we'd love to preserve
For children, but also for ourselves.
for ourselves.
It's a powerful reminder
It is.
that even as we grow up and face the complexities of the world,
The messiness.
it's important to hold on to those things
Yeah.
that make life meaningful.
Yeah. Those things that connect us to our own sense of
Innocence.
innocence and wonder.
And speaking of connecting,
Okay.
that reminds me of Bookspace. Imagine having a community of fellow readers
Oh, yeah.
to discuss those Catcher in the Rye moments,
I like it.
those things that we wish we could preserve, those experiences that shaped who we are.
I love that. It would be fascinating to hear people's different perspectives on that.
Right, like what are those moments for you?
Yeah. Maybe we could even start a thread on the Book to Read group on Bookspace,
Oh, that's a great idea.
dedicated to exploring that theme.
We should do that.
Oh,
But now let's get back to Holden
okay.
and that famous ambiguous ending.
Yeah.
I won't spoil it
No spoilers.
for anyone who hasn't read it yet.
But let's just say
But let's just say
it leaves a lot of room for interpretation.
a lot of room for interpretation.
Does Holden find peace? Does he reconnect with his family?
Right.
Does he start to heal,
Right.
you know,
Right.
from his trauma? Salinger doesn't give us easy answers.
Oh, no. He leaves us with questions.
He does. He leaves you thinking, doesn't he?
He does.
Yeah.
He leaves us with questions that linger
Yeah.
long after we finish the book.
And that's part of what makes it so great, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Makes you think.
It does.
It challenges you
It challenges you to look at your own life.
to examine your own experiences with growing up,
Growing up.
finding your place in the world.
And I think that's one of the reasons it's still so relevant.
Yes.
You know, decades later.
Decades after it was published.
It speaks to those universal feelings of adolescence, right?
Right.
The confusion,
Yeah.
the angst, the longing for connection.
That search for identity.
That search for identity.
And it does it with such honesty and raw emotion
It does.
that it just feels relatable.
It does, even if you're miles away from
Yeah.
Holden's world.
Yeah. Prep schools, New York City in the 1950s.
1950s. And even if you read it in high school, like many of us did,
Yeah,
it hits different as an adult.
it does.
You notice new things
You connect with Holden
on a deeper level.
on a deeper level.
Yeah.
You appreciate the nuances of Salinger's writing in a way that you couldn't before.
You couldn't before.
It's a testament to the book's enduring relevance
It
and
is.
its ability to speak to readers across generations.
Well said.
Let's see.
It really is. And it's a book that continues to spark those conversations, doesn't it?
It does. Which is what we love to do here at Book to Read.
What we love to do. So let's continue this conversation.
Okay.
Over on
Over on Bookspace.
Bookspace. We'll be in the Book to Read group,
We'll be there.
ready to chat about all things
Catcher in the Rye.
Catcher in the Rye. And if you haven't read it yet,
What are you waiting for?
dive into Holden's world.
Dive into Holden's world.
Ah.
and let us know what you think.
You won't regret it. It's
Yeah.
a journey you won't forget.
A journey you won't forget, that's for sure.
It's fascinating how Salinger uses symbolism,
Right.
to represent Holden's struggles.
Yeah.
Like, remember those ducks in Central Park?
The ducks?
He's obsessed with knowing where they go in the winter.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. He's like, where do they go?
Where do they go?
It seems like such a simple question.
Yeah, right.
But it becomes this, metaphor
Yeah.
for all his anxieties about change, about the unknown.
Exactly. It's like he's projecting his own fear
Right.
of disappearing,
Of losing what's familiar.
Of losing the familiar onto those ducks.
Back to the ducks.
And considering he's been kicked out of school,
Right.
facing this uncertain future,
Yeah.
those anxieties make sense.
They do. They totally do.
You think?
It's interesting because throughout the book, Holden seems to be both repelled by
Yeah.
and drawn to the idea of adulthood.
That push and pull.
It's that push and pull.
Yeah.
He's so cynical about the phony adult world.
Yeah. But at the same
At
time,
the same time.
he keeps trying to act older than he is.
Yeah. Sneaking into bars,
Picking a fight.
lying about his age.
It's like he's rejecting childhood,
Uh-huh.
but also clinging to it.
Yeah.
He wants to protect innocence, but also experience the messiness of the adult world.
Yeah. The disappointments.
The disappointments, right. And that tension
Attention.
fuels a lot of his actions.
It does. Think about that scene where he's watching the kids playing in the park.
Oh, yeah.
He's drawn to their joy,
Right.
but also he knows he can't go back.
That's it. He's stuck, isn't he?
Yeah.
In this in-between space.
Yeah.
Not a child, not an adult.
And it's just causing so much angst.
Yeah, that longing for that simplicity,
Right.
that purity of childhood. But the reality is...
The reality is he's growing up
right.
and the world is becoming more complex.
So much more complex. And that complexity is something that he struggles with.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing I appreciate about Holden,
Yeah.
even when he's being a total jerk,
Yeah.
is that he's painfully self-aware.
Oh, yeah.
He knows he's messed up.
Mhm.
He even admits at one point to being mentally ill.
And that's significant, right?
Yes.
If you think about when this book was published,
Right. 1951.
1951, people didn't talk about mental health.
Right. Not like we do now. Not like we do now. So Holden's, in a way, ahead of his time. He's articulating something that so many teenagers experience,
Right.
but they don't have the words for.
The language to express it.
And even though he uses humor
Right.
and cynicism
Yeah.
to kind of deflect from that pain,
Mm-hmm.
you see those moments of vulnerability.
Yeah, where he's reaching out for connection, for understanding.
Think about his interactions with Jane.
Yeah, with Jane.
There's this tenderness
Yes.
when he remembers their childhood,
Right.
playing checkers,
Just
talking.
talking.
It felt simpler, more authentic.
So much more authentic.
And it's interesting to
Yeah.
contrast that with Sally.
Oh, Sally Hayes.
Sally Hayes.
Yeah.
She embodies
Everything he hates.
everything he says he hates.
Right. She's conventional.
She cares about appearances,
Uh-huh. She's interested in all the phony things
all the phony things.
that he despises.
And yet, he keeps going back.
Why does he go back?
Is she a safe option?
Maybe.
Someone he can be charming with,
Superficial.
superficially, without having to be vulnerable.
Right. Or maybe deep down,
Or maybe, deep down,
he wants to fit in.
he wants to be part of that world he rejects.
Yeah, that world he claims to hate.
It's that classic teenage dilemma,
It really is.
wanting to be unique and accepted
All at the same time.
all at the same time.
Yeah.
And Salinger just nails it, doesn't he?
Oh, he does. He nails it.
He captures that conflict.
So well, and I think that's why, even though Holden can be frustrating,
Yeah,
I think that's why readers connect with him.
they do.
We've all felt that.
that alienation,
That alienation, that longing,
the longing for connection,
right? That struggle to figure out,
who we are.
yeah, who we are in a world that often.
Doesn't make sense.
Just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it really is a book that stays with you.
And I think one of the reasons that ending is so powerful
Mm-hmm.
is because it doesn't tie everything up neatly. In a little bow, it leaves you wondering,
It does.
what happens to Holden? It's not a happily ever after, is it?
It's not a happily ever after.
And I think that's what makes it feel real.
Right.
Life is messy.
Life is messy. Life is complicated. Sometimes there aren't those easy answers.
There just aren't. We're left to imagine, right?
Right. We're left to imagine what Holden's future holds.
Did he find some peace?
Did he find peace?
Did he learn to connect,
In a way that felt real, in a way that felt authentic.
in a way that felt authentic? Yeah.
To him.
To him. That's the beauty of it, isn't it?
It is.
Salinger doesn't tell us.
He doesn't.
She leaves us with those questions,
He invites us to think about them.
to think about it ourselves,
To draw our own conclusion.
based on what we know.
Based on what we know about Holden and his journey.
And I think that's why it's
So-
still so relevant.
Why The Catcher in the Rye is still so relevant all these years later.
Decades later.
Decades after it was published. It speaks to those universal experiences of growing up.
Right. Of feeling lost, alone,
Alone, absolutely.
trying to figure out who you are.
Where do you fit in?
Yeah, where you fit in.
It's funny how certain books just transport you back, right? Specific time.
A specific time and place. I remember reading Catcher in the Rye for the first time
Yeah.
in high school, and I felt like Holden was speaking directly to me.
I had a similar experience. It was like he was articulating all those feelings that I had,
Yes.
but I didn't have the words for.
Yeah, you didn't have the language.
And I bet there are listeners out there
Yeah, maybe they're picking it up for the first
picking
time,
it up for the first time, or maybe they're rereading it
revisiting it years later.
and finding that new meaning.
Yeah, finding a whole new meaning in Holden's words.
That's the magic of literature, isn't it?
It is. It really is.
It connects us across time and space.
Makes us feel less alone.
Less alone. It's like having a conversation
Yeah, conversation with the author.
with the author.
With the other readers who've been touched by the story.
And speaking of conversations,
Yes.
imagine the discussions we could have
Oh, I know.
on Bookspace.
On Bookspace, if we had a whole group,
dedicated to The Catcher in the Rye.
all the different interpretations.
All the interpretations, the perspectives.
We could debate the meaning of the ending.
Analyze Holden's relationships.
Right, talk about the ducks.
Talk about those ducks. What do those ducks represent?
Right. The possibilities are endless.
Endless. And for those of you who haven't joined Bookspace yet,
What are you waiting for?
what are you waiting for? It's a great app for book lovers.
It is. Connect with other readers.
Share recommendations, discuss your favorite books,
Even organize your virtual library.
organize your library. It's like
Oh,
social media,
But for books.
but for books. And it's a great way to discover new authors
Yeah, new titles?
you might not have found otherwise.
Absolutely.
So if you're looking for a community
Of bookworms.
of bookworms, head over to Bookspace.
Bookspace. And join the fun.
Join the fun. We'd love to have you.
And be sure to check out the Book to Read group,
We'll be there.
where we'll be continuing the conversation.
All about The Catcher in the Rye.
The Catcher in the Rye.
Well, folks, that wraps up our deep dive
It does.
into this timeless classic.
that classic.
We hope you enjoyed exploring Holden Caulfield's world with us,
I hope so.
and we hope it inspired you
Yeah.
to maybe revisit the book or pick it up for the first time.
For the very first time.
Until next time, happy reading
Happy reading.
and keep those pages turning.
Keep those pages turning.
Okay.